Good afternoon. Welcome to the Analyst. Today we'll be taking up 5 newspaper articles from the Hindu and the Indian Express and discussing them. The handout for the same will be available in the description of this video for your kind perusal. Please have a look at that. The first article that we'll be taking up is related to Bhutan, as Prime Minister Modi is on a visit to Bhutan and he has been awarded Bhutan's highest award, Order of the Druk Gyalpo. The second article is related to South China Sea, as Chinese Coast Guard ships attempted to block two Philippine government vessels from accessing the Sandy Bay in South China Sea. The third article is related to insurance sector, as last year government withdrew tax swaps from the high value policies in the insurance sector. The fourth article is related to Mohiniyattam, as the State Human Rights Commission in Kerala took cognizance of an attempt to set fair complexion and agreeable looks as the prerequisites for learning and performing Mohiniyattam by an exponent. And the final article is related to the arrest of Kejriwal. Now, the first article is related to Bhutan. The context behind it is that Prime Minister Modi is on a visit to Bhutan and he has been awarded Bhutan's highest honor, Order of the Druk Gyalpo. So we will be discussing India-Bhutan relationship, the significance of Bhutan, the China angle in the relationship, and India's concerns, as well as a few suggestions. This is important in GS2 under the topic India and its neighborhood relations. Now first let's look at the map of Bhutan. There are some disputed areas which China claims now. In the northern Bhutan, there are the areas of Jakarlung and Pasamlung. In the eastern Bhutan, China lays claims over the Sakteng Wildlife Sanctuary also. In the western Bhutan, China claims the Doklam Plateau, the Drummond region, Jiakchu, etc. These are some of the areas which China claims as its own. Now let's discuss the significance of Bhutan first. Bhutan is a strategically located country. This is like a buffer state, a buffer between India and China. It also acts as a buffer for the Siliguri corridor of India, that is the Chicken's Neck, which connects India's mainland to the northeast India. Also, Bhutan shares about a 477-kilometer long border with China, and therefore it is strategically important from the security point of view for India as well. Plus, it is culturally significant as the religion, custom, language, etc. we share the common roots, the Indian population as well as the Bhutanese population, and Bhutan has been a vocal supporter of India's cultural diplomacy also in the past. Plus, in the context of hydropower, India also needs Bhutan for its energy security as it buys hydropower from Bhutan. And Bhutan earns revenues from it, therefore Bhutan is also benefiting from the relationship. Also, Bhutan therefore has the highest per capita income in South Asia. From an economic point of view, Bhutan needs India more because India is the largest trading partner of Bhutan. 80% of Bhutan's trade is carried out through India, about $1.5 billion in total. And India also gives developmental assistance, extends credit facilities, etc. to Bhutan. Bhutan also benefits from India from a strategic point of view also because Indian military helps Bhutan in guarding its borders. It also came to the rescue of Bhutan during the time of the Doklam crisis in 2017. So it's a mutually beneficial relationship between India and Bhutan. Now let's look at the China angle in the India-Bhutan relationship. With China, Bhutan has disputes, particularly with respect to the borders, as China lays claims to various regions of Bhutan. Particularly in North Bhutan, it lays claims to Jakarlung and Pasamlung. In the northern Bhutan region, China has established various villages and now it is laying claims to this area. In the western Bhutan, it lays claims to the Doklam Plateau, and in the eastern Bhutan, it lays claims to the Sakteng Wildlife Sanctuary, which is a recent claim only. If we look at the 1959 maps, in 1959, the Foreign Ministry of China issued a note that the only dispute with Bhutan with respect to the border disputes between China and Bhutan is in the eastern Bhutan sector. There are no other disputes in the northern Bhutan or the western Bhutan. But later on, there were incursions in 1966 which were protested by Bhutan also and by India also. And then it started laying claims to various sectors in northern Bhutan. And in 1996, it offered a kind of a package deal to Bhutan, saying that we will forego our claims in the northern Bhutan, that is the Jakarlung and Pasamlung sector, which accounts for about 500 square kilometers of Bhutanese territory, if you give us the Doklam Plateau, which is only 269 square kilometers. This was obviously protested by Bhutan also and India also. Now, this shows clearly the land grabbing tendencies of China. This shows the tendency of salami slicing tactics which are adopted often by China, that it goes for incremental encroachment. It starts laying claims to more and more territories, and then later on it offers a deal that if you give me Doklam Plateau, then I will forego my claim on the northern Bhutanese territory, as it knows that it is significant for the security and strategic perspective. In 2021, there was an MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding, which was signed between Bhutan and China for a three-step deal for resolving the border disputes between Bhutan and China, but the details were not shared. And Bhutan does not have formal diplomatic relations with the P5 countries, the permanent 5 members of the United Nations Security Council. But China has been pressurizing Bhutan to set up formal diplomatic relations. It wants to open an embassy also in Bhutan. And in terms of economic cooperation, China has also been giving aid to Bhutan. It has been assisting Bhutan in agriculture, in infrastructure development, in tourism, etc. And it also signed an MOU. An agreement was signed recently to set up a sister city relationship between the city of Thimphu in Bhutan and the city of Xining in China, to make these two as sister cities and to encourage development in these regions. Also, Bhutan endorses the vision of President Xi Jinping with respect to the Global Development Initiative, Global Security Initiative, Global Cultural Initiative, etc. This getting closer of Bhutan and China is a matter of concern for India. Now, what are the concerns of India? One is with respect to the strategic implications if Bhutan and China come closer. What if Bhutan caves into the demand of China to give it the Doklam Plateau? It may be a strategic disaster for India, as China will get direct access to the Siliguri corridor or the chicken's neck. It will be coming very close to India then. Plus, it might have economic implications as well, because India gets hydroelectricity from Bhutan. India's access to hydropower may be curtailed, then India's energy security may be affected, although it won't matter as much. But if China also gets access to the natural resources of Bhutan, then it will be a matter of concern. In terms of diplomacy, it might be a matter of concern for India, as Bhutan is India's trusted ally and has been an all-weather friend. If it goes into the Chinese embrace, then it will be difficult for India, and it will be adversely affecting the regional power dynamics, as India also has regional aspirations to become a regional power first. Now, what can India do? One, we can go ahead and sign long-term agreements with Bhutan. We can give petroleum, fertilizer or coal, etc. to Bhutan. For this, we can sign long-term agreements with Bhutan, or we can sign agreements for purchase of hydroelectricity from Bhutan. For example, we are doing it from the Basochu hydroelectric power plant from Bhutan. We can develop more connectivity like road links, rail links, as well as promote tourism with Bhutan to promote people to people and cultural ties. We can strengthen the economic ties by promoting more trade, giving more credit facilities, etc. to Bhutan. And ultimately, it has to rest upon peaceful and amicable resolution of the disputes, especially the border disputes, because it has to be done through dialogue only, not through confrontation. We can promote more defense cooperation, the frequency of the joint military exercises that can be increased, and the Indian military can extend more support while guarding the borders of Bhutan to save it from China. Now, the next article is related to South China Sea. The context behind it is that Chinese Coast Guard ships attempted to block Philippine government vessels in South China Sea. They were attempting to access the Sandy Cay, the sandbar in South China Sea. This is important in GS2 under the topic Effect of Policies, Politics of developed and developing countries on India's interests. Now, various geopolitical thinkers say that the 21st century will be the century of Asia, and whoever controls or dominates Asia will rule the world in the 21st century, and particularly whoever controls these shipping lanes will rule this Asian century. First, let's look at the map of South China Sea. The South China Sea is bordered by the countries of China, Taiwan, Philippines, Brunei, Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore, and Vietnam. Now let's look at the significance of the South China Sea. One is it is rich in oil and natural gas resources. As per the estimates of US Energy Agency, it has about 10-11 billion barrels of oil deposits there. It also has about 190 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. And it has rich fishing grounds. As per the data estimates by BBC, about half of the world's fishing vessels operate in this region, and it has about world's 10% of the fishes. Plus, it is an important trade route. About 20% of the global trade is carried out through the South China Sea. India also has stakes in the South China Sea. It is particularly significant as 55% of India's trade in the Indo-Pacific region is carried out through the South China Sea. Therefore, the freedom of navigation and maritime security is important in that region. Plus, India also has energy needs. Therefore, in 2011, India signed an agreement with Vietnam to promote the exploration of oil in the South China Sea, which we are also going ahead with. Plus, it is important from the strategic calculations point of view, because we want freedom of navigation, maritime security interests, and the promotion of free and fair global trade routes, and various trade routes pass through the South China Sea. Now let's look at the disputes which are there in the South China Sea. South China Sea has various islands which are disputed. For example, the Paracel Island, Scarborough Shoal, the Spratly Islands, and the Woody Islands, etc. Now, China lays claims to about 90% of this entire South China Sea. In 1947, the Kuomintang Party of China gave a map. It published a map which showed the so-called 9-dash line. And this 9-dash line is almost 2000 kilometers away from the Chinese mainland also, and it is within a few hundred kilometers of the mainland territories of Philippines, Malaysia, Vietnam, etc. Therefore, it is contested. And in Spratly Islands, China has been building artificial islands containing port facilities, military buildings, and it has even built an airstrip on the Spratly archipelago. In Paracel, Beijing has had an exclusive control ever since 1974. In Scarborough Shoal, also there were Chinese incursions and intrusions. In 2016, the Permanent Court of Arbitration at Hague also gave a ruling that the claims of Beijing in the Scarborough Shoal, they do not have any legal basis, and it is also violating the sovereign rights of Philippines, while it is not able to explore various natural resources in its own exclusive economic zone. Not only that, the Permanent Court of Arbitration had observed that China is adversely impacting the marine organisms and the marine life in the region, and it has caused irreversible damage to the marine reserves. Plus, recently it also installed a barricade in the Scarborough Shoal, which was also protested by various countries. Over the Woody Island, China has instructed various military installations. It has constructed an airstrip, and also it has installed cruise missiles, etc. And therefore, it has militarized the island and lays claims over the entire Woody Island too. Now, what is the way forward for the South China Sea dispute? One is we can go ahead and engage in dialogue, as there has to be a political framework for coming to a solution in the South China Sea dispute, and we can resort to quiet diplomacy also, because getting to a solution through legal means the prospects of that are very limited. Therefore, some backdoor negotiations can also be put in place and quietly it can be resolved. And ultimately, there has to be a legally binding code of conduct which has to be put in place, because the ASEAN countries like Philippines, Vietnam, etc., they also have claims over the South China Sea. Now, the next article is related to the insurance sector. The context behind it is that last year government withdrew tax SOPs for high value policies in the insurance sector. So, we will be looking at some data related to insurance as well as some recent steps. This is important in GS3 under the topic Indian economy and issues related to planning, mobilization of resources, growth, development and employment. Now, first let's look at some data related to the insurance sector. India is the 10th largest market in the insurance sector in terms of the total premium value. When we look at the life insurance segment, then India is the 9th largest market. And it has a huge growth potential. From the current about $10 trillion, it can grow to about $33 trillion by fiscal year 30, considering a compounded annual growth rate of about 15%. And in India, the insurance penetration in fiscal year 2021-22 was 4.2%. Out of this, it was 3.2% in the life insurance segment and 1% in the non-life insurance segment. And India has a growing middle class. We are expecting to add about 14-15 crore people in the middle class segment by fiscal year 2030, which will become a growth driver for the insurance sector, as they will be needing to protect themselves and their properties, assets, etc., needing insurance ultimately. In India, the digital penetration is increasing. India already has the second largest internet user base in the world, and when the digital penetration increases, then it becomes easier to buy various insurance policies. There have been regulatory reforms also. The FDI limit in the insurance sector has been increased from 49% to 74% by the Insurance Laws Amendment Act of 2021. Also, the rural market in India, the insurance penetration is not as much, therefore there is scope for growth. Less than 10% people in rural areas have life insurance and less than 20% people in rural areas have health insurance. Therefore, these are some of the drivers which can drive the growth of insurance sector in India. Now, why there is need for insurance? First, let's look at that. It is important for the mobilization of resources, because when premium is collected, when people take insurance, premium is collected, that money so pooled together, it is used for investment purposes, for creation of infrastructure, for growth in economy, etc. Ultimately, utilization of resources happens. It creates employment opportunities also, direct as well as indirect. Various brokers, insurance agents, claim managers, underwriters, etc., they get jobs through the insurance sector. Plus, there is a hedging against the uncertainties which can be done through insurance, and it ultimately ensures security for the business, and the risk is spread out and it is not at one place only. It contributes to the GDP growth of India. About 3.5% is estimated contribution directly by the insurance sector to the GDP growth rate, but there are certain challenges. One is there is low penetration of insurance in India. There are various factors behind it. It depends upon the trust, that people do not trust the insurance companies. It depends on culture also and financial literacy also. When the financial literacy improves, people become more aware regarding the risks, financial risks which are involved, and hence they start insuring themselves. Plus, there are frauds also which are committed, misrepresentation, false claims, etc. These are some of the problems plaguing the insurance companies also, which then turn non-profitable. Plus, there are diverse risk profiles, people coming from different backgrounds. Then it becomes difficult for the underwriters to underwrite such policies, and the pricing also becomes difficult because of the diverse risk profiles. Now, what are the recent steps that the government has taken? The government has gone for a drive to ensure that people are getting insurance. The regulatory authority, the Insurance Regulatory and Development Authority, is driving certain changes. For example, it came up with a bundled insurance product, Bima Vistar, to provide life, health, accident and property cover through a single and simple policy. It now permits insurers to sell value-added services also with the policies. It was not allowed earlier. For example, the insurance providers, they can give a yoga class also bundled with a health scheme. A Bima Sugam platform has also been launched. It is a one-stop shop for customers for integrating insurers and distributors, essentially ensuring that taking insurance becomes easy. And there will be Bima Vahaks also. Bima Vahaks will be mostly women. They will be leading the campaign to spur insurance penetration in each Gram Sabha, that is women motivating people to take insurance policies. And it will be linking the digital death registries to the platform so that claims can be settled within hours or a day. The laying of claims will be easy, and the states will be roped in to form insurance committees and expand coverage across districts. This move will also be allowing the smaller micro and regional insurers to reach different strata in the society. Earlier, there were two schemes also which were particularly promoted by the government. The Pradhan Mantri Jeevan Jyoti Bima Yojana, which provides for life insurance worth 2 lakh rupees at just 330 rupees per annum. It was for any person who holds a bank account and whose age is between 18 to 50 years, and it gives life insurance amount to your family in your absence. There was another scheme, Pradhan Mantri Suraksha Bima Yojana. Under this, accident insurance cover is given worth 2 lakh rupees at just 12 rupees per annum charges. This is also given to any person holding a bank account whose age is between 18 to 70 years, and insurance also covers permanent disablement due to accident as well. Now, what are the way forward to promote the penetration and the growth of insurance sector in India? One, the insurance companies have to be more customer centric. They have to come up with such products. They have to study the needs, behavior, patterns of the consumers to ensure that they are buying insurance. The micro insurance has to be promoted. The financially weaker sections of the society, they also have to be brought in under the insurance net to promote more penetration. The insurance products, they have to be innovative and customized as per the demands and needs of various segments in the society. Awareness can be spread and financial literacy can be promoted among various sections. For this, cooperation is required between government and various agencies, various stakeholders, NGOs, etc. And not only that, while taking insurance related decisions, the environmental, social and governance factors, they should also be taken into account so that in the long run, the insurance companies, they are sustainable and profitable too. Now, the next article is related to Mohiniyattam. The context behind it is that Kerala State Human Rights Commission took cognizance of a matter whereby an exponent was trying to set fair complexion and agreeable looks as prerequisites for the learning and performing of Mohiniyattam. This is important in GS1 under the topic Indian culture, salient aspects of art forms, literature and architecture from ancient to modern India. Now let's look at Mohiniyattam. Mohiniyattam is an Indian classical dance. It evolved in the state of Kerala. It derives its name from Mohini. Mohini is the female avatar of Lord Vishnu. Let's look at its history also. It has its roots in the Sanskrit text of classical dance, Natya Shastra, and it was performed by Devdasis. Devdasis were females who were temple dancers and dancing in temples during the reign of the Chera kings. And it developed as a performing art during the 18th and 19th century also. It developed because of the patronage of various princely states. For example, it was patronized by the Maharaja of the state of Travancore, by Swati Varma, etc., which ultimately led to the present form of Mohiniyattam, the systematic development of Mohiniyattam. Now let's look at the features of Mohiniyattam also. Conventionally, it is a dance form which is performed solo by female artists, and the dance form is laissez type. That is, the dance is having grace, it is of a feminine type, and usually there are graceful movements. There is a play also which is conducted through dancing and singing. Singing is usually done in a language which is a mix of Malayalam as well as Sanskrit, and the music played along with it is Carnatic music. There are graceful swaying body movements. That is, there are no abrupt jerks, there are no sudden leaps, rather there are graceful movements. There are glides, up and down movements on the toes. Usually it depends upon the art of balancing rather. But emphasis is given on the hand gestures and mukhabhinya. That is, emphasis is given on the facial expressions and the hand movements rather than the footwork. There are 24 hand gestures which are also taken from a text of Kathakali, the Hastadipika. The costumes which are worn while performing Mohiniyattam, that is usually a plain white sari or an ivory color sari with a golden brocade, and the musical instruments which accompany the dance, they are usually the cymbals, the veena, the flute, etc. Now the next article is related to the arrest of Kejriwal. The context behind it is that ED has custody of Kejriwal in an excise policy linked money laundering case. Now this is important for us in GS2 under the topic the state legislature structure, functioning, etc. and in GS3 under money laundering. Now what's the story behind this? Let's understand first. There are allegations against the Deputy CM of Delhi that the Deputy CM made some changes to the excise policy of Delhi without getting the approval of the LG. This caused some loss to the exchequer of Delhi to the tune of about 580 crores. And there are allegations that they also received kickbacks from the owners, from the people involved in the business of liquor, because there was preferential treatment which was given to them. Now, in this excise policy case, the Delhi CM Kejriwal was not named as an accused, but still he was taken into custody by the ED because there was an accusation that he laundered the proceeds of the crime. The proceeds which were got, the kickbacks which were received from the excise policy case, they were laundered by the Delhi CM Kejriwal. This was the allegation. Now, we have to understand the concept of predicate offences also for this. The Prevention of Money Laundering Act defines the act of money laundering under Section 3 of PMLA. What does the Section 3 of PMLA say? It says that any person who knowingly assists or knowingly is a party to any process or activity which involves the proceeds of crime, their possession, concealment, acquisition or use, that person will be guilty of the offence of money laundering. Its punishment is given under Section 4 of the Prevention of Money Laundering Act. There are certain schedules also along with the Prevention of Money Laundering Act. Those schedules also list certain offences. If a person commits those offences, then that are termed as predicate offences. Now, Kejriwal was not named as an accused in the excise policy case, but still he was taken into custody because it was alleged that the proceeds of the crime which were gotten through the excise policy scam, alleged excise policy scam, Delhi CM helped in laundering that. Now there are certain judgments also for this. One, Vijay Madanlal Chaudhary and others versus Union of India 2022. In this, the court observed that if a person who is accused in a predicate offence, if that person is acquitted in the predicate offence, then he or she cannot be prosecuted under the Prevention of Money Laundering Act. But in Pawan Dibbur versus Enforcement Directorate 2023, it was observed by the court that if there is an assisting in the concealment or use of the proceeds of crime, then that person need not be an accused in the scheduled offence. Even then he can be prosecuted under the Prevention of Money Laundering Act. That is, if the person did not directly participate in the scheduled offence but helped in the concealment, possession, acquisition or use of the proceeds of crime, then also he can be prosecuted. Now there is another aspect to it. Since he has been taken into custody, can the Delhi CM Kejriwal continue to be the CM of Delhi? Regarding this, the courts have observed that constitutional morality, good governance, constitutional trust, these are the basic norms for holding a public office. Recently, there was a judgment by the Madras High Court in S. Ramachandran versus V. Senthil Balaji. in that case, the court considered the case of Manoj Narula versus Union of India also, which had observed that constitutional morality is important for any person holding a public office, and constitutional trust is also important because the citizens also expect their representatives to be legitimate, and it is a legitimate expectation. Plus, there are practical difficulties for a person who is in jail to continue to be a minister or to be a chief minister, because he will be needing to sign various files, he will be needing to read various official documents. Now he cannot ask the Secretary of State to visit him in prison, because those documents will have to be scanned by the jail authorities also, which will ultimately lead to a breach of the oath of the public office which he took before entering the office. Plus, it will lead to more practical difficulties, as on what basis will he be receiving salary if he is not doing his duty? If he is lodged in a jail, then how can he draw salary from the state exchequer? Such practical considerations were also taken into account by the Madras High Court while giving this judgment. Thank you.